Hello and welcome to Hedge with Herbarium. I'm Kelly and I'm sharing how heavy metal helped me through trauma. And I suppose it's obvious to a lot of people out there that heavy metal helps get out your aggressions. I mean, that's obvious. You've had a hard day at work, you come home, put on some metal and it helps you, you know, in a way, act out your aggression without hurting anybody. But what I wanted to start with is I've been into heavier music ever since I was a baby. Apparently, this is the story my father told me, that when I was a newborn, they couldn't get me to sleep unless the Rolling Stones was playing. And they put me right up next to the speaker, apparently. I don't know why, but apparently I wouldn't go to sleep until they did that. Mum tried to make me listen to the Beatles. Apparently I cried every time the Beatles came on. So it's funny because my mum was all about the Beatles at the time and my father was all about the Rolling Stones. But then later on he got into country and western. And in later years, especially when Mum was drinking a lot, she was getting into Fats Waller, Connie Francis, very depressive, especially when she was drinking. But also disco, George Benson, Lou Rawls. We grew up with Mum after she won custody when I was 9. So that was the kind of music we had going on. But she also exposed us to a lot of eclectic stuff like Miriam Makeba and others. She was really heavily into Shirley Bassey. But for me, it was funny. I actually went through an ABBA phase. I was into the teeny boppers, like, I'm really embarrassing myself here, but like Sean Cassidy, Leif Garrett. So those were the bands I was into. But then when I hit my early teens, I discovered Kate Bush, and she became my everything. For years she was my number one. I had posters all over the walls and the ceilings and listened to her albums constantly. And then of course when I went to high school I got into Lena Lovitch and another great female artists who I really looked up to. And I have a separate video that I posted on Portal Stormer. So I'm glaring a bit, I'm sorry. So I will share that here on this channel too. But it wasn't until I was about 19 I broke up with my boyfriend. I'd gotten over the previous couple of years really heavily into Pink Floyd, which is awesome. I'm still into Pink Floyd. But it wasn't until I came back home to visit with my family, my brothers were listening to Metallica. So apart from Led Zeppelins and Deep Purple and other bands that you could consider heavy, it was Metallica that really sparked that love of metal. I remember the song was Battery, and I didn't think of it at the time as being battery as in bashing, but I thought it was about energy, like a battery. I was a little bit naive, have been throughout my years actually. But before I got into Metallica, I went through a couple of years really being into Madonna, and it was also Cyndi Lauper. I remember at the time you were either one or the other. It's weird how people do that. You either loved Madonna or you loved Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper wasn't strutting all over the place, showing bits and talking about sex all the time, but Madonna had her appeal. I really loved her voice at the time, and I remember her version of Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. It was brilliant, great vocals, but as soon as I discovered Metallica, that was all swept aside, and I started getting into metal. And I remember wearing the Metallica, I had a tank top with the band on the front with the word Metallica, and my grandfather saying, "What does that mean, Metallica?" But I really got into their albums, especially Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, Kill 'Em All, and Justice for All. I liked the Black Album, but it's funny how I just sort of fell off after that. It was just, I don't know what it was. It wasn't the initial heaviness that I enjoyed. It was more solemn, which I still loved, but for some reason I kind of dropped off. um, but then after Metallica, funnily enough, I got into Van Halen. I'll excuse the little squeaks. We've got some kittens which I might actually show later, so I'm going to pause here and bring the mama back in. So anyway, what happened was with Van Halen, here she is, but she's not going to see her babies, it's really annoying. With Van Halen, the album that really stood out for me was Mean Streets. I was really heavily into that, and also other albums like Diver Down and their Van Halen album. But having gone through trauma, alcoholism with my mother, as well as her narcissism, I had a lot of pent-up rage from having to be, because I was the oldest, the one who picked up the pieces, who kept things kicking along, took care of the boys. You know, I was always having to be responsible, so there was a lot of pent-up rage. And also too, I was the whipping boy, as it were. I was the one who copped it all. And I think being a female, there was a bit of jealousy there. I heard that from other aunties. My mum was one of those femme fatales. She was a Scorpio as well, and when she entered the room, all eyes had to be on her. Now that sounds really bitchy, me saying that, but she did a lot, and I'm going to share other content in Firehorse Grove to go deep into what happened to me. But I found with metal, there was a real righteousness to the anger, that was sort of like this chest thumping, you can't dump on me, you can't do this to me, I'm going to fight my way out, that kind of vibe that I really enjoyed with metal. I felt justified and righteous in my anger, but I will talk about that a bit later, about how that can sometimes be consuming. But with Van Halen, especially Mean Streets, the song Mean Streets, but there's so many different songs on that album I really loved. Out of Love, I just loved the intro to that. There's a real metallic sound to it. I just adored it. And it was funny because Van Halen also had this kind of rockabilly sound sometimes mixed into it, so I started developing appreciation for other music through them, as well as other bands. So having dabbled in those bands in the early days, Megadeth to a degree, I preferred Metallica, but I met a girl called Julie. I'm going to put her picture up. I was working in a tile factory and met her, and she was the bee's knees when it came to metal. She exposed me to a lot of other bands, and as well as Henry Rollins. We both had a love for Henry Rollins, Black Flag and all that. Now you couldn't really say 100% that's metal, but it was heavy, and that's how she and I started developing a friendship. And then she said, hey, there's a lot of concerts I like to go to that my other friend just doesn't want to go to, including Kyuss. We went and saw Kyuss. We also went and saw Metallica. Metallica was touring, this was in the late 80s, I think. They were touring with the band Kyuss, or Kyuss, I forget how you pronounce it, but they became Queens of the Stone Age, also awesome. But at the time, I remember, and I'll talk about the songs that really stood out for me later, but the song Thumb I really enjoyed by Kyuss. And the funny thing is, at the Metallica concert, it was funny how when people would try to jump up on stage, the roadies would just push them off back into the mosh pit. But that was a really good concert, and it was the only time I saw Metallica. With meeting Julie and getting into Henry Rollins, I just wanted to backtrack a little. I really enjoyed getting into his spoken word as well. Actually, that's how I first got into him, spoken word. I forget the names of them, but I'll put them up, I think. But one of my favourite songs of his, which really spoke to me, was Disconnect with the Rollins band. But there's also, I wanted to talk about, just as a little break, and in between all the other bands I got into, especially in Australia, the Midnight Oil. I was heavily into them. Very, again, chest thumping, but more protest songs. Very much about social justice, especially for the Indigenous population. I'm part Aboriginal. Really loved them. But I also got into bands like Morphine, and this is later on, Concrete Blonde, The Butterfly Effect, which is an Aussie band, brilliant. Filter, of course, and some people say, I'm a Tool fan, number one is Tool to me, even though you couldn't say they're more progressive rock than metal. But I found that I liked Filter, and then I realised, oh, there was another us and them kind of mentality with Filter and Tool. Apparently Tool fans weren't supposed to like Filter. I never fall for that crap, that's just childish stuff. But I also got into Korn and The Cult. The Cult's not really metal. Baby Animals, which is an Aussie band, awesome female lead singer. But I also got into The Cure, Hunters and Collectors, which is a great Aussie band, at The Mark of Cain, who was sometimes produced by Henry Rollins, awesome. Soundgarden, of course, and U2 and Tricky and The, lots of different bands that weren't necessarily metal. But I wanted to, I touched on just previously about the things to do with the trauma that the metal really just ticked all the boxes for me. Like I said before, righteous anger and rage, injustice and unfairness. It also went hand in hand with substance abuse. I was very much into marijuana, very heavily into gummies. Just last year got myself off them. You kid yourself in thinking that, oh, this takes the edge off, or it helps me relax at the end of the day. When it becomes something you rely on, it compounds in different ways. For me, I stopped remembering my dreams. Yeah, it seems funny now when I think about it, because I love the feeling, the sensation, especially when I was listening to metal. Having a joint or something and just enriching the experience, especially with Tool. Every time they put out a new album, I just had to be off my face to listen to it. But I learned, as you do when you get older, that you don't need to have substances to appreciate something, although sometimes it does enhance. You've got to be an adult, a grown-up about it. I don't encourage anybody to take drugs, but when you're an adult, it's your body. You choose to do what you want with it as long as it doesn't affect others. But that was something that seemed to go hand in hand, especially when we were going to concerts. I always had to have a joint before we went. I wanted to talk about the different concerts we went to too. For example, we went and saw bands like Pantera and Marilyn, Manson, Machinehead. We saw Tool twice, Slayer and Celtic Frost. They were great. We saw Trivium, their newer bands, and Devil Driver and Lamb of God. Danzig we were both fanatic about, and I still am. I love Danzig. Also Machinehead and Pantera, like I said. I wanted to just point on that. We went to a Pantera concert, and everybody always thinks that Pantera were a real neo-Nazi band. When we were at the concert, it was in, I think it was Festival Hall, which is known as a real dive, but there was a lot of metal bands in Melbourne, Australia, in the 90s, and I saw Pantera, and standing right in front of my friend Julie and I, was this obvious neo-Nazi. He had a barcode tattooed across the back of his neck, and he stood throughout the concert, or at least as it began for the first few songs, with his arms crossed, not, head banging or jiving to the music. His girlfriend, I remember, she had dyed pink red hair, and she was headbanging all over the place standing next to him, but he just stood stock still while everybody else was enjoying the music. And I remember Phil Anselmo, the lead singer of Pantera, stopping the concert mid-song, and he pointed him out. He got the guy operating the spotlight to shine right on the guy, and he was looking like this, but he was still standing with his hands like this. And Phil Anselmo said, you there with your arms crossed, everybody else is getting into it, but you're not. What, you think that you're so awesome because you're a Nazi? I just want to point out to everybody, we have never been a racist band and never will be. Anybody who comes to our concerts who thinks that's what we're about, you're wrong, forget it, and if you don't like it, you can get out, sort of thing. Now eventually that guy ended up leaving, of course, because everybody turned around to look at him, and we're standing right behind him. We're like, yeah. But I think that was the concert where we saw this guy getting dragged out. He was so drunk he'd thrown up all over his shirt, and he was happy though. He was smiling and waving, and even the security guards were laughing as they dragged him out backwards. Something I want to point out too about metal crowds, I've never felt threatened in when we've been lining up to get into the concert. Any time when we've had been around metal people, they were always really decent people, a lot of them really very intelligent. The ones who were the troublemakers were the walkers, the people who walk by, who, oh, you're going to metal, who do you think you are, oh, you reckon you're so tough, and we're all just minding our own business waiting to get into the concert. So that's a little side note about metal that I loved. It was like getting into a community. And I wonder if a lot of people who get into metal, not all, but a lot of people who do, maybe there is some past trauma, and then there's the righteousness you feel when you hear the words of certain songs that really hit home and express how it feels to be downtrodden or abused or what have you. That's something that's really interesting about metal. I think that I really liked, and also too, the music's awesome. It's sometimes like some really good classical music. They have some excellent riffs and melodies and blah blah blah. But I just love metal. It seems to hit all the spots. Whereas other music is, well, that's dance music, or that's this or that. But metal just gets you right down to the cells, to the bones. So other concerts I went to with my friend Julie include the Butterfly Effect. Great rock band, I wouldn't say metal. Henry Rollins, we saw spoken word events countless times, but also the band a few times. We saw Morphine. I wanted to talk about Morphine. They're, it's hard to explain, sort of bluesy rock. Very strange, and the lead singer Mark Sandman played the bass that he rigged up himself. It was very unusual bass sound. I really loved songs like Buena, and they did one called Kerouac. But we went to that concert, and it was really, I remember that night driving in the taxi to, I think it was the Prince of Wales Hotel, where we it was raining, and the song on the radio was The Doors' Riders on the Storm. It was just really surreal because it kind of put us in that mood. And then of course when we got there, we got into the concert, and as we were waiting for the band to come on, I think the opening band was playing. Don't remember who they were. But I remember turning around, we were sort of close to the bar, and I saw Mark Sandman standing in amongst other people. He wasn't with anyone, but just standing in the crowd. No one knew who he was. I knew who he was instantly, and we locked eyes, and I so wanted to go and talk to him and say, hey, I really love your music and everything. And he smiled at me, but we never talked. And I always rue that day, the time just feeling like I was too shy to at least just go and say hey, because I really appreciated his music, and it's really sad how he passed away. But great voice, great band. Not metal, but you know, there's other bands, other music fills in the spots for other things. But other bands I really got into included Sepultura, of course, Soulfly I love, Rammstein and White Zombie, and Cain even, which was sort of like a mix between, I suppose you could say, hip hop and rock and a little bit of metal. It's hard to explain their sound, but they were awesome. I saw the Angels live too. The Angels was a great Aussie band, known over here in America as Angel City, because apparently there was already a band called the Angels. Don't even know what they produced. They might have been great, I don't know. But here, in no order, I just want to talk about some significant songs that really got to me as time went on. Metallica, of course, the song Master of Puppets. I just love that song. Mean Streets, like I mentioned, for Van Halen. Danzig, there's too many favourite songs. I'm sorry about the fly that keeps doing a flyby. I must swat it. But Left Hand Black is one of my all-time favourite songs of Danzig. I wish I could play them here for you, but I'm not a reaction channel and I don't want to get dinged. I will put it in the description and just look it up yourself. Look them up and check out the music. At Machinehead, one of my favourite songs that they did, apart from Bulldozer, is Only the Names, which was about drugs. Very interesting song and very beautifully put together. Pantera, my absolute favourite song, is Walk. I just love how that hits hard. Marilyn Manson, Beautiful People. That was a great concert, Marilyn Manson, and I just love his intelligence. People just didn't know how to look any further. They were just looking at what he looked like and what they assumed he was doing, or the band was doing. Tool, there's too many songs. I can't categorise one as my favourite, but the first song I ever heard was Sober. On the radio, I remember I was doing some ironing one night and that song came on, in that depth of the bass, everything just hit me. Loved it. Rammstein also, even though some of the songs you don't understand, it doesn't matter, they're just fantastic. And Ich Will is one of my favourites. There's so many others. Los, I love that song too. Sepultura, one of my favourite songs of theirs is False. Soulfly, one of my favourites of theirs is Living Sacrifice. It's just incredible to build up to that. White Zombie, another song that stands out to me, is More Human Than Human. There's plenty of others, but I could go on and on about all the different favourite songs and explain why, but I don't think I'll do that. I'm just going to put it in the description. Go and check out these bands. But I wanted to move on and talk about the trauma. And to start with, the assumption that metal is evil. Of course, if you're a turbo Christian who doesn't dig any deeper than what you've been told to believe or think, there's nothing evil about metal. Yes, there's a lot of metal songs that are evil, if you want to term it that way, especially with, you know, a lot of the song titles, you know, blood and guts and horror, and that's the point. I don't know whether a lot of people who produce or create or perform heavy metal have gone through trauma themselves, but there's I wonder if they're also very highly sensitive people, because when you are a highly sensitive person, everything means so much because that volume is up, and I'm very highly sensitive, which is ironic because I went to all these metal concerts where it was really heavy. But my experience with metal has been, it's been there for me. It's helped me feel righteous. It's helped me get out the rage without taking it out on people. And that's really a really important thing. Now, one thing I will say that I wonder is if it compounds trauma, listening to metal, because you can feel righteous about things, but maybe just keep cycling through that rage, that righteous rage over the years. It's interesting now, I've gone through a lot of trauma processing this year and I'm really in a different headspace. And it's interesting how metal hits differently now, that I have a better understanding of what I went through, how it affected me and how I'm changing. So when I listen to metal now, I'm not saying it doesn't satisfy me, but it just doesn't hit the way it did before. And I think it's because my volume was way up. I was very traumatized, even though I didn't know it at the time. But now, having gone through and understanding who did what and why and how it affected me, it's almost like it's not lost its luster, but I still listen to metal and enjoy it. But that oomph, that feeling like, yeah, so that slotted into that piece, or that key into the keyhole, whatever, that's exactly how I feel. That it's interesting how now I'm a little bit different with metal, but still love it. Doesn't mean I'm going to not like it. Again, like I said before, the righteous rage. Throughout the years, I've also been appreciative of other genres who, and where they've expressed for me different things that we go through in life. So it's not all about the rage, it's not all about the trauma. And I feel like anybody who's going through stuff, you can listen to lighter music if you like. I wonder if that helps. I think it depends on the person you are. If you're the kind of person who is very sensitive and emotional but not angry, metal might be too much for you. I don't know, it's interesting, but metal carried me through. Metal gave me the outlet throughout life to work out those aggressions. It might have been misplaced anger. Oftentimes with trauma, you end up turning around and hurting people who didn't deserve it, inadvertently or maybe even intentionally. But with metal, it was almost like I was cocooned. I was in my own headspace. I had my headphones on or whatever, and that was where I worked it out. I might have got it out, but I didn't work it out once it was out. Do you know what I mean? But I love metal for the fact that it gave me those secret spaces where I could gnash my teeth and think and write and do the things that I might not have done in front of other people, but at least it helped me put it in its place. It also helped me with my creativity, with writing, and metal gave me a mindset that made me stronger, made me more stoic, but it also gave me the tools to protect and sometimes attack or deflect if I needed to. I don't know if I'd never gotten into metal if the way I processed my trauma would have been different. I'm assuming it would have, but music has been a solid part of my life, my whole life, most of the time just listening to it to myself, because wherever I've lived, you know, to have metal blaring doesn't really make you popular with your neighbours, sort of thing. But anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. The healing is an ongoing process. I wanted to also mention how I've always been repulsed, but at the same time fascinated by dancing. I never liked dance music, but that doesn't mean that my toe wasn't tapping when something good came on the radio, or if somebody was playing it in their car or what have you. But metal, even bad metal, I would have always preferred, but now that I've come through the other side, everything's blossoming and changing in me. And there's probably some young people who watch this and probably think this is a load of bullshit, but it's true. Sometimes things wear out, sometimes things lose their luster, but that doesn't mean that, for me anyway, that I will become one of those little, like, just pansy old ladies just listening to country and you know, the music that I have always looked down my nose at because, oh, that's dance music or whatever. But I enjoy Righteous Rage. I'm still working through the trauma, and metal will be there for me. But also the things that it helped me with was the desire for retribution, righting the wrongs, turning around and confronting the sources who brought me trauma or who ignored the trauma and said that everything was going to be alright when it wasn't. It helped me work through that, but also understand my own rage, the shadows that I carry. But I wanted to show you too some of the, well, I won't unpin them, but I've got a lot of the ticket stubs of all the concerts I went to on there, but that doesn't matter. I just wanted to show that metal isn't evil. It carried me through. There was some metal I heard that it was like, come on now. Especially when it comes to hurting people. Like, I don't want to talk about it because it's probably going to trigger people, but there's a lot of metal out there that can be really dark. But then again, there's lots of songs out there that aren't metal that are dark without even obviously intending it. But escapism as well, depression and anxiety, all those things were tempered by the metal music, because that pumping sound gets you up off your ass and gets you back into it. So there's lots of different ways that metal helped. And I'm waffling here, but I just wanted to close off with that. And I'm going to be doing some more flow-on little shorts about metal, the different songs and what they meant to me. So keep an eye out for that. And I hope, if you're going through stuff, I hope you can possibly share what helps you, what music helps you. Do you think metal is good for you, or does it make you feel more compounded and angrier? Sometimes it can do that. But anyway, take care, blessed be, and if you're interested in trauma processing, please head over to Firehorse Grove and subscribe to that playlist, or at least just subscribe to the channel here, because I'm going to be sharing the steps I'm developing to be more formal, the content that I'll share in terms of dealing with trauma, especially when including paganism and other things. So take care, and if you are going through it, just know there's people out there, and please share if you want to, because we can talk about it at Firehorse Grove. Have a great 4th, and have a great day, and take care of yourselves.